Music is just magic, and it's kind of relentlessly wonderful. It keeps on being, and playing music is a little bit more fun than talking about it. But talking about it is really fun.
Welcome to the Acoustic Guitar Podcast. I'm Joey Lusterman, your host for this episode. I was lucky enough to sit down with Jimmie Gilmore and Dave Alvin while they were on the road touring their new album, Texicali. I've long admired both of these artists. Each has a storied career with back catalogs full of musical treasures. On their own, or with the Flatlanders or the Blasters, Gilmore and Alvin have helped shape the sounds of what we now call alternative country, but they explore many iterations of roots music, honky-tonk, folk, punk, Americana, you name it. Our conversation is wide-ranging too. Listen closely and an overall theme emerges, the joy of playing music with a friend. To that point, let's start the episode with Alvin and Gilmore performing their new song, We're Still Here.
Trouble, never been alive. Well, I've had my share, I survived.
Yes, sir.
The way up ahead may not be clear, but I ain't worried 'cause we're still here.
I had wild times in Houston at the Allen Park Inn. Long sleepless nights of temptation and sin. But when they tore that joint down, you know I shed a tear. Now the Allen Park's gone, but Jimmie Dale, we're still here. Yeah, we're still here. We're still here. We're still standing, no matter what you might hear. We're still here. We're still here. We just keep on rolling. What we do, 'cause we're still here. If you've never gone crazy, you've never been in love. Uncomplicated romance is unheard of. Love's a tangled tale of hope and fear, but I'm willing to try 'cause we're still here. We're the music businessman with the music business smile. Said the songs I write sound real old and way out of style. But I've been bopping these blues for over 40 years. I don't know where he is now, but Jimmie Dale, we're still here. Yeah, we're still here. We're still here.
We just keep on standing, no matter what you might hear.
We're still here. We're still here. We just keep on rolling, 'cause we stay here. We're in New York City, land of cash and concrete.
We went the wrong way down a one-way street.
So true, so true.
We made it to that, so it's perfectly clear.
You can make it too, ladies and gentlemen, 'cause we're still here. Yeah, we're still here. We're still here. We're still standing, no matter what you might hear. We're still here. We're still here. We just keep on rolling.
Well, we'd known each other for a couple of decades, but we'd never really sat down and played music together, especially, just the two of us. And, it was usually sing-along things at the end of a night. And then a guy by the name of Mike Leahy thought that pairing us together would be fun for a couple of gigs. So we started in Denton, Texas, and it was about midway through that show I started thinking, we should maybe make a record together, because we found in these shows that we were doing where it was just Jimmie Dale and me with acoustic guitars, that we found all this stuff out about each other that we didn't know. One was, a real important one for me was, there used to be this club in LA from the 50s to the early 70s called the Ash Grove. And that's where you could see everybody from Lightning Hopkins to Reverend Gary Davis, Mance Lipscomb, Ralph Stanley, Bill Monroe, Clarence White, Johnny Shines, all sorts of great bluegrass, folk performers. And I never knew Jimmie Dale when he was a young man and journeyed out to California. He was hanging out at the Ash Grove. And my brother Phil and I, my older brother Phil and I, when we were little kids, we started sneaking into the Ash Grove. And so we had this Ash Grove connection, and we Jimmie got to be pals with Lightnin' and Son House and Brownie McGee and stuff, and my brother and I got to be friends with Lightnin' and Big Joe Turner and T-Bone Walker and Eddie Cleanhead Benson and Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee. My brother took harmonica lessons from Sonny Terry, and it was all because of the Ash Grove. So we had this connection. It was just like, wow.
And I was a kid, but I already had a wife and a kid at that time, and we hung out. The three of Joe Carroll and Elise and I went to the Ash Grove all we could. There was like one year, one kind of half a year that we were in LA. So Dave and Phil are younger than me, but we eventually found out when we were doing this tour together that we both had been there at the same time. That all three of us.
I don't think you were Jimmy's knee at that point. But.
We didn't know each other, of course. But the thing is, because both of us, I think, have been pretty strongly stereotyped. We've been, each of us has been categorized in a genre or a pigeonhole that, and I kind of think that even maybe both of us did that. Like Dave said, we were friends. We had met each other, and Dave even wrote some stuff about me back in the days when I was being really promoted by Elektra Records and all that. Well, High Tone originally,
yeah,
and then None Such, and then Elektra, but Dave and I, we got to be friends, but I think we perceived each other's music as being way not the same, and then so when this little experiment came up, I thought, and I think maybe Dave thought, I was telling people that I was about to retire. I was telling them I was going to quit, but Mike said, well, you want to do this thing? And I said, sure, that sounds fun. That's not the trouble of having a band and all that,
Right.
So, and we went out and just immediately, it was so much fun. I thought I'm going to do a song and Dave will do a song and I'll do a song and we'll tell stories. But right away, it started being that the old songs that I had done solo before I ever was a band person was stuff like that I learned at the Ash Grove, or that I learned in that period, from records, and it was like Dave knew all these songs. It was like we had a repertoire almost built in, and somehow it worked out that this, the different kind. It seems to turn out that the kind of people that like Dave's music but never heard of me sort of liked the combination, and then vice versa, the same thing. People that my following that weren't into the blasters or the punk thing and all that, but when they heard Dave play and sing, it was like with me, and it just fit.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up genres because you have, you are from a little different places with like country, alt country, cowpunk, and that kind of thing. But it all is coming from similar roots in Americana music. And like when you got together and did a version of Stealing, the two of you, when you were putting those two records together and going back to one traditional songs like Stealing, but also you went back through your own catalogs. And so what was it like learning each other's songs?
Oh, fun. The whole thing's fun, I mean, going back and playing songs like Stealin' or Broke Down Ninja Blues or Betty and Dupree or the KC Moan, the old Memphis Jug Band number, that's just going home, And I always thought that Jimmie Dale, he did some blues on all of his records, but I always thought that he was an underrated blues singer, and he really is one of the best. And so on both albums, the Downey to Lubbock album and then the new one, Texicali, I'm kind of like, maybe you should do a little more blues there, Jimmie Dale. You're a pretty good blues singer. Let's do some blues, And but that's also, genres to me are just they're a marketing tool. That's all. When musicians get together, they don't really. I guess maybe they do say, what kind of music are we playing here? But in general, if you took the Bob Wilson's Texas Playboys, Miles Davis, Jimi Hendrix, and I don't know, Big Spiderbeck, and you put them all in a room together, the first thing they're going to do is, okay, let's play a blues, let's get to know each other and play the blues. And so genres are just things that like I said, they're more for marketing than they are for the musicians.
I think all the best musicians I've ever known did not have boundaries like the categories like that. They just they like music, and so some of it is there's an artificial distinction that's made just purely for totally I think misguided business purposes. I think it's been in a way a kind of both a problem and a goad. It's sort of a double-edged sword, because it does produce. For one thing, people love it, I think, when they discover that they actually like something that they didn't think they would like.
Both of our careers, one of the things that's the similarity as opposed to the differences is both Jimmie Dale and I like to play with the genres. We like to say, okay, well, let's bend this out of shape. And like on the new album, there's an old country song called "Why I'm Walking," originally done by Stonewall Jackson. And the way he did it was pretty. I got an angel on my mind, that's why I'm walking. And I just thought, well, why don't we do it like Stonewall Jackson? Because Jimmie can sing the hell out of it, but we don't really need another country version of it. And I just thought, well, let's make it a New Orleans R&B number and pretend that we're down at Cosmo Matassa's studio in New Orleans with Dave Bartholomew and Earl Palmer and Lee Allen and the whole Fats Domino band, and give it that kind of groove. So it became, and just playing with genres so that, it could pass as a blues song, it could pass as a country song, it could pass as a rockabilly. And
what's the process like for reimagining a song like that? You're moving up the neck, but you're thinking a different rhythm too?
In this case, I really couldn't envision it when Dave brought up the idea. I love that song. I love Stonewall Jackson, and it's so country. His version of it is just like distilled country music from like the stuff that my father liked the most. He played guitar too, and was my very early years were, I was completely steeped in Hank Williams and like that, and then up into Stonewall Jackson was later, but he was one of my favorites. And so I thought, I can't do that. I can't. Stonewall Jackson has already done this perfectly. I can't do that. And Dave was having a vision of this other way of doing it. And then almost immediately, as soon as we got the groove going, and then I started singing it, and I'm singing. I'm trying to stay to the same melody that Stonewall Jackson did, but it fit. It just fit, and it's fun. It really fun, and really and so in different cases. In that case, I think I was so entrenched in a way of thinking about the song that I couldn't imagine whatever Dave was imagining. I think in some other ways I have that too. I can jump worlds pretty easy, but that was and this he also Dave wanted me to do a Blind Willie McTell song, and I had somewhat missed that the Piedmont, he called it the Piedmont blues thing. I had heard maybe a couple of cuts or something, but I was really enmeshed in the time, in the Ash Grove time and all that. Sun House, and of course Lightning. That's Lightning is uncategorizable. He's not any of those.
He's just Lightning.
but Sun House, and then and Robert Johnson, that Elmore James, make the city version of the Delta blues. Was that's more where I had been entrenched, and so I had a hard time learning to sing the Blind Willie McTell thing, because I kept doing it kind of the way Elmore James would have done it, but once again it turned out that I wouldn't have thought of that to begin with, but it turned out to be just great learning experience.
Did you push Dave into any new territory during these projects?
I guess only in the sense of because some of my stuff is sort of so melodic and kind of like, I don't know, ethereal or something, and Dave is great at that, but it's not his normal territory. I think that's a good way to say it.
That's a good way to say it. Meat and potatoes, old meat and potatoes, Dave.
I really like the version of, I'm forgetting the name now, but the Deportee.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Woody Guthrie. It's a Woody Guthrie song. Although I first learned it from John Baez record. Like, John Baez was a huge influence on me, and she partially led me, even though I was at the age when I started learning how to play guitar and everything, was just at the time of the folk explosion. And that's what I was in love with songs, with stories and melodies and stuff. And I kind of regretfully now, I never did focus on learning to play the guitar like I think I could have if I had looked at it that way. But I was real focused on the lyrics, and the emotion of the stories and everything. But the John Baez opened up. I think a lot of the young people now don't really know what a pioneer she was. How she did things like, she had Fred Hellerman play. Well, Fred Hellerman was from the Weavers and was blacklisted all that time, and John Baez let him back in. She was. It had been long enough, and she was popular enough to let that happen. But she introduced a lot of people to Woody Guthrie, and of course to Bob Dylan, and it's interesting how the things intertwine, you know. I was steeped in country music, but I became way more influenced really by what we'd call roots, I guess, especially blues. When I discovered that the blues was the bedrock of most of the music I liked most, including Hank Williams, and like once again, lots of musicians are more interested in the, like, where their music came from, and you know, in the history, in musicology, than a lot of just the listening public. They're people just like something or don't. They don't too much care about, you know. But musicians, a lot of musicians are like, wow, that sounds like, you know, this I can hear what, you know. Merle Haggard sang just like Lefty Frizzell. Well, and Lefty Frizzell was somebody that I loved from childhood, and now he's basically unknown. But
well, musicians are always looking for, you know, if you play a good song and you play it well or whatever, it's, you know, it's magic, right? And so musicians are like,
how'd you do that?
part of that is, okay, I'm playing this, the guy's playing this, and this, okay, I gotta learn that. But then you go, well, who wrote the song? And then, oh, I never heard of that. I gotta check out that guy. That's another secret of the magic trick, you know. But with Deportee, you know, we'd been doing it in this format of just me and Jimmie Dale acoustic on that tour. But when we went in the studio to record it, the night before, I sat up and watched and listened to 143, and I'm not kidding, versions of Deportee. And I was just making mental notes of, okay, don't do this, don't do this, don't do that, don't do that. And so we went in, you know, because it's such a great song, and it just has to be, those kind of songs have to be handled with kid gloves. But at the same time, you kind of got to push it a little to make it your own. And I knew Jimmie could, you know, was singing the hell out of it. And so instead of having mandolins and accordions and sort of the things that are on every version, it was like, okay, let's make it very ethereal and ambient and kind of spooky, like you're actually kind of there in Los Gatos Canyon at the night of the plane wreck, you know. So you just kind of picture that stuff in your brain and try to do it differently, you know.
It took me back to your record, Braver Newer World, which I feel like had similar kind of like otherworldly sounds and slide guitars that are really evocative and everything like that.
Well, Jimmie Dale's an otherworldly guy.
Did you two write together at all for this project?
We wrote the title track, Downey to Lubbock, together, and we wrote the We're Still Here together.
What was that process?
Well, we write differently. We're different kind of writers. And you can tell, you know, like in We're Still Here, you can tell Jimmie's verses from mine pretty easily. But what we did on both songs were, with some songwriters, you know, when you co-write, you know, you're there for hours. Oh, what's another word for tangerine, you know? And but with Jimmie Dale and I, it was actually kind of more in the old folk tradition of, we were just throwing out lines. Like I remember with Downey to Lubbock, I came up with the first verse and the chorus, a little idea. And then Jimmie Dale, when we were just in the studio, just started throwing stuff out that was like, wow, that's great. No, keep that, you know?
Yeah, I was learning the song, and I had no idea. I wasn't thinking of this as going to be what we'll keep. I was just kind of learning the feeling and everything, and then it's kind of like, okay, now I'll go back to the hotel and I'll write some verses to it that'll be real good here. And Dave goes, no, we're keeping that. It was weird.
Yeah, because sometimes, you know, you get in the studio and you don't, let's say you don't know the song that well, and you're kind of ditzing around. How does this go? And you play your best stuff. And then, you know, 14 hours later, you might get back to where you were at the beginning, but you know, sometimes it's good just to grab stuff right as it happens. It's the, you know, Sam Phillips, producer and owner of Sun Records, is one of my heroes. So it's kind of more the Sam Phillips thing. Grab it, you know. Get that moment, capture the moment, you know.
You had mentioned that playing shows together was a lot of fun, and I'm wondering if you have any specific memories either from this more recent tour or going way back when you were just friends about times you spent together then.
My favorite memory was playing the first time we played the Troubadour down in West LA, you know, storied, legendary club, right? And Jimmie Dale has been in a lot of bands. He's been in a lot of country rock bands, a lot of country bands, a lot of folk music ensembles, a lot of bluegrass bands, a lot of this, a lot of that. But he'd never been in a rock and roll band. And that hadn't registered on me, really. You know, because the Flatlanders can rock pretty hard, but my band's a rock and roll band, you know. And we were doing Downey to Lubbock, and at the end of the set, and Jimmie was doing his harmonica solo, and you know we're really hard in the groove, right? Everybody's in the pocket, and I looked down at Jimmie Dale's feet, and his feet were dancing, and I was like, he now knows he's in a rock and roll band, and I think he likes it, you know. And that was my favorite one. That was when I was, oh, this is all worthwhile. Look at this is good.
That reminds me of the strange fact that when Dave and I were just doing the duet thing, one thing was it caused me. I had played harmonica long ago, back in the time when I played just solo all the time, and then I hadn't for many years because I always, when I started doing bands and stuff, I figured out, okay, the secret to this is having people that are better than me at everything, you know. And I'll do the singing, and I strum a little guitar, but I get real people to play the lead and play the, you know, the rhythm section and everything and all. So I stopped. I didn't play the harmonica anymore for, golly, I mean 25 years or so, you know, long time. And so one night I pulled it out. I don't remember what for. I remember him looking at me going, "You play the harmonica?" Because we kind of needed it. We needed something else, you know, something that we can handle it with just two guitars and two voices, but it helped to have a. And so Dave started making me play the harmonica all the time after I didn't think of myself as a harmonica player. And then now, because of it, I've rediscovered that I can do that and that I like doing that.
Yeah, you know, you don't have to, it's one of the lessons of punk rock, you know. You don't have to be Little Walter or Sonny Boy Williamson or Snooky Pryor or Sonny Terry. Just make some noise. You know, and that the joyous quality of that, you know, because when Jimmie plays harmonica, I think it's a constant source of discovery that's happening right there. It's not like a guy that's got all the Little Walter licks memorized and can do it, and you know, it's just, wow, this is fun. You know, you're a kid again in a garage, playing music with your pals. You know.
Going back to the song, you mentioned that you were always driven by the song and not as much as by the guitar parts. I'm wondering, do you remember some of the first songs you wrote and kind of what was in your head that you said, I need to write a song?
Well, I was first inspired. I kind of think that somehow all my life I was interested in a lot of other stuff when I was younger, and I was a reader. You know, I read books all the time, and I was real. I ended up actually, the little bit of college I did, I studied philosophy. I studied linguistic analysis and symbolic logic was the main thing. Those are the only things that I didn't flunk out of. I made A's in those in the couple of years I did in college. But I think I always, and I had just kind of assumed that I was going to be a songwriter, a singer, a songwriter. But when I was younger, I think, I'm pretty certain that I had this imprint in my head that I'll be a songwriter someday, but you have to be old and experienced and la la la. And I went to at our high school, there was a Halloween carnival one time, and off in this one dark room, there was this guy over in the corner. He was somebody that was a couple of years older than me, and I kind of knew who he was. I didn't really know him. And we saw there playing the piano and singing. It was Terry Allen, and Terry was he was doing his own songs, and they were just great. And they were not like anything on the radio or anything I was familiar with. But from that, so I was in that means that I was early in high school, you know, because he was a couple years older and we were still in school together, and that started me writing my own songs instead of just learning everybody else's songs. And that was the and in a way that was kind of it was sort of, once I got over that hurdle of thinking that I wasn't supposed to be doing it because I was too young or something, it sort of came automatic to me. Although not in the sense, I've never been prolific. It's only if an idea hits me, and then if it stays with me for a while, then I'm not real good at like taking an idea and then just sitting down and making it happen. You know, that doesn't work very well for me. But if something kind of comes, and then in some cases it's like where I've had an idea and I've gone, this is good, I'm going to work on this. But then finally, when a deadline comes around, that's when I go, okay, I will sit down and finish this thing. But it's I don't know if that answers your question at all, but that's kind of how it started out for me. Mm-hmm. Terry Allen was a real important part of my musical life. We actually became really good friends after that. Then I didn't know him at the time that he inspired me so much.
Well, for me, the greatest songwriting lesson I ever got was from the blues singer Big Joe Turner. And my brother Phil and I and our friends used to follow him around from gig to gig when I was like 13, 14 years old. And so one day walking home from school, I wrote this song for him in my head. And I had everything in my head. I had the horn section, the horn parts, I had the lyrics, I had the melody, I had the drum beat, I had the groove. I'm walking home, it was about 1.5 miles from school, and so I'm walking, just by the time I got home, I had that song. So the next time I saw Big Joe Turner, a few days later, I said to him, Big Joe, I wrote a song for you. And Big Joe said, well, how's it go? And I just stood there going, and I couldn't remember anything. And finally Big Joe Turner looks at me and he goes, well, if you can't remember it, it ain't no good to begin with. And that was my first songwriting lesson, and that's stuck for ever since.
Earlier we were talking about Happy Traum, who recently passed away, and both of you had connections to him, is that right?
I didn't really have a connection to him outside of, that was the first like music book that I bought, you know, with like chord, diagrams and this, that, and the other, was his book on, how to play the blues. And it was, how to play a lot of it Piedmont style, the Reverend Gary Davis and Brownie McGee stuff. And so just the name alone just had like, oh my God, he was a Mount Rushmore kind of guy. And then around 2018 or 19, Jimmie Dale and I and my band, the Guilty Ones, we played at Levon's studio up there in Woodstock, and he came to the gig because, as Jimmie will tell you, they were all friends. But I was, can I cuss?
Yes.
I was scared shitless because it was like, I'm a rock and roll barroom blues basher as opposed to a machine like finger picker. And there's Happy Traum, and we're talking, and we're introduced, and I was like, oh, for God damn, why'd you have to come to this? Why'd you have to come to any gig of mine? You're gonna leave unhappy, trust me. And then afterwards he was all like, "Oh, I really love the show," and I was like, "Wow." But yeah, my first response was happy trauma. God, I'm dead. You know.
And I'd had the same thing. His books, and Happy and Artie, his brother, who died several years ago, their books and their instruction tapes and all that. I had learned a whole lot from. And then many years later, I got to be friends with him. And we did some shows together. And by the time this happened in Woodstock, he was an old friend of mine, so I wasn't intimidated by him being there. This is always comical to me, the idea that Dave gets intimidated by other guitar players.
Oh God,
when
yeah.
he can outplay everybody. You know?
No, I can't. No, I've had my butt kicked so many times by guitar players that I have no ego when it comes to guitar. But I will say this, I get my point across when I'm playing, and that's the best thing you can do.
Did either of you ever teach music to anybody? Songwriting, guitar?
I taught a songwriting class. Yeah, Jimmie does one every year. I did it once at Jorma Kalkinen's Fur Peace Ranch. They did a special session of the Fur Peace Ranch, but they did it out in the middle of the California desert at this old motel. And it was great, and I taught songwriting for a week, and I had to pat myself on the back. I was pretty good at it because there was a couple guys that knew how to write songs, and I sussed them out right away. It's like, okay, you've taken other classes, you know what a bridge is, you know what a chorus is, you know what a pre-bridge is, you know what a pre-chorus is, But the rest of the guys didn't have a clue. But by the end of the week, they were songwriters, and I got to say, I did a good job with them. I hopefully, if they're listening, love y'all, miss y'all, hope to see you soon. But, yeah.
And I also did one of Jorma's things, but at the Fur Peace, but it was with Bill Kirchen, and but the way I do it, I have taught a class one week of the year for 27 years now, so at the Omega Institute in upstate New York. So that's so it's close to Woodstock and all that, and there's some crossroads. But I don't teach. What I do is I curate a situation where the class teaches itself, and I stick in a lot of stuff. I stick in a lot of insights I've said to people a lot that it's actually about my favorite thing I've done in my music career, because what it did was from the very beginning of it, it started making me think about and kind of figure out how to articulate things that I was doing automatically, unconsciously, and kind of thinking about my own process, and then hearing all the different ways that other people think. I remember early on in maybe the first year that I did the thing, there came this one point where somebody in the class, something got said in one of and he said, "What? You write the words before you write the melody?" And the other person was like, "Well, what do you mean? Of course, like." You write the melody before you write it's like, little things like that. It's like people are just different, and they come at things from different angles, and the fun of discovery. Music is just magic. It's magic. And it's kind of relentlessly wonderful. It keeps on being, and playing music is a little bit more fun than talking about it. But talking about it is really fun. And this one thing I'll tell you, with Dave and the Guilty Ones, which is Chris Miller and Lisa Pankratz and Brad Fordham, the three of them, and Dave, and particularly Dave, it's like they all have these memories, these storehouses of memories, of knowledge, of music, of popular music, of all kinds of music. And I don't have that anymore. I have spotty memories about things, that really imprinted me and everything. But and they remember things like who was on the sessions when this cut was done and stuff like that. And I love it. I love that. I feel like I myself am getting an ongoing class in musicology, just being around them.
Well, thank you, Jimmie. Well, it's vice versa. Jimmie Dale is a constant inspiration. It's hard to get tired and down, because of the immediacy. Jimmie lives in the moment, and that's a beautiful thing, especially on stage. Because one, you never know what's going to happen. And that's the same is true with me. When you play with me, I'll curveball you. I don't mean to be. I'm not trying to be cruel. I'm just having fun. And with Jimmie Dale, he'll throw you curveballs, but they keep you on your toes and they keep everything interesting.
Can you just tell me a little bit about each of the guitars that you have today?
I have a Martin DC. It's called a Martin DC Aura, and it's an amazing guitar. It's from about 2004, 2005 when I got it, maybe earlier. And they don't make them anymore for some reason. It might have to do with something, but yeah, it's a great recording guitar. It's a great live guitar. It's just a great. I've got some old, some old 50s Martins D18s and triple 18s, but this is the workhorse, and yeah, so Martins start making these again.
Well, it's a Guild, it's called a Bluegrass Special, and it's a D50, and there's a funny story behind it. My old friend James Pennebaker, and who's one of the best musicians I've known at all, he's a session guy and then touring, with a bunch of Nashville major. He's part of the old Fort Worth gang, a bunch of really great musicians, and Stephen Bruton had produced my first None Such album, and James Pennebaker played guitar, fiddle, and steel guitar and slide on that all over that record. He's just amazing. But he had gotten into a situation where he had some problem with his neck, and he couldn't play on stage anymore. I don't remember exactly how it all went down, but he had to go off of the road, and so he got hired by Guild, which I believe at the time they just had been bought by Fender. I'm pretty sure that's right. But this is so he. And then Lloyd Maines, my old friend Lloyd Maines, who's a producer, musician, amazing person. He's the father of Natalie Maines of the Chicks, and he produces their records and produced some of my records and a lot of the Flatlanders. And anyway, Lloyd called me up and he said, "Hey Jimmie," James called me and he said he's got some guitars he wants us to try out. It's like so he had gone to work as the artist representative for Guild. So he sent us these guitars, and I, in my cynical mind, kind of went, "Oh golly, that's wonderful. That's probably just a cheap throwaway guitar." And it kind of sat in the case for a long. But every time I picked it up, I'd kind of like, this is kind of a good guitar. And then finally, I checked into it and found it. Oh, this is a very expensive top of the line. This isn't just a cheap throwaway for art, to appease artists or something. This was, James had really done something right. And now it's turned out I grew up with Gibsons, playing Gibsons all the time, but there's something about the way this feels on the fretting and everything that fits my hand, kind of like the old Gibsons did. I had an old country and western that it's been long gone now, but it also has a tone that suits me really well. I don't, somehow it kind of hits all. It's got a real full bass and clear treble, and so this has become the guitar that I prefer all the time.
Great. Well, thank you both so much for taking the time. It was a lot of fun talking to you and hearing music and everything.